Hi there, this is Dan from onlinebasscourses.com. Hope you're doing really well. In this video, I'm going to show you how to liven up your bass solos. There are loads of different styles of music, loads of scales, lots of different ways that you could do a bass solo. For example, soloing over giant steps. This video isn't going to be about that. It's going to be more the solo that you get thrown at a gig or a jam session, the sort of funk solo around one chord vibe, maybe the blues kind of thing. So with that, we start with note selection. And for this video, I'm gonna go through maybe 3 or 4 scales that are really common to use in this style of music, and one of them is the Dorian mode. And that's the first thing, you know, what notes are you supposed to play in a solo? And of course that depends entirely on context, and there are 101 different things, but let's just pretend we've got just an E minor 7 chord. So I'm going to be doing E Dorian. So I'm playing that on the 12th fret of the E string. I'm going fret 12, 14. Then I'm going 10, 12, 14 on the A string. Using first finger, second finger, fourth finger there, a little bit of extended fingering. Then I'm back into one finger per fret, going 11, 12, 14 on both the D and the G strings. You can add the 10th fret in there. That's actually a mode from the D major scale, so that would be just the D major scale. But if we start it on E, that's E Dorian. So it's a really common sound, that. Now, going hand in hand with that is the minor pentatonic scale. Perhaps if you're just starting out or more of a beginner, then that is a really, really great scale to improvise and solo over. So here I'm going 12th fret. It's fret 12, 15 on the E string, and then 12, 14 on the A, D, and the G strings. That's the pattern of the E minor pentatonic scale in that position on the bass. Just mixing up a bit of the minor pentatonic with the Dorian. Now, add one note to that minor pentatonic, and you get the blues scale, which sounds very bluesy. So that's just a flat 5, which is found if you've got your root note, for example, on the 12th fret, you just go 1 fret up, 1 string down, and that's your flat 5. Octave up from there is the next place you find it. Often used as a passing tone. So already we've got 3 scales that go hand in hand that sound good together. Whilst on that subject, I'll just show you a couple of other combinations that work really well too. We'll stick on the root note of E, but that was a minor mode. It's got a minor 3rd, it's also got a major 6th and a minor 7th. This really funky, cool, fresh sound. I'm going to stick on the E, but this time I'm going to do a Mixolydian. Maybe I'll move down here as well. So the Dorian was a minor mode, and we had a minor pentatonic. Now I'm going to show you this is a major mode, and we're going to do a major pentatonic as well. So put your second finger on the 7th fret of the A string, that's E. Then little finger, 9th fret A string. Then we've got 6, 7, 9 on both the D and the G strings, with fingers 1, 2, and 4. That's your E Mixolydian scale. And since it is major, you would use a major pentatonic over that. So that's frets 7, 9, 6, 9, 6, 9. So let's get into a few nuts and bolts that you can be thinking about when you're soloing. I say thinking about when you're soloing, I mean what you do is you practice these as much as you can, and then you don't think about them when you're called upon this. So the first thing is repetition. I'm going to just press play on a drum beat I've got here, which you can download. I'll put a link below where you can do that. And I'm just going to demonstrate a little bit of repetition. I'm going to go to the Dorian. I'm also going to stay exclusively just in this position. I'm going to use the Dorian with that minor pentatonic and that blues. I don't know what I'm going to do and when. I know these scales really well, and I know a few patterns which we'll get onto, but let's see what happens with that. So I was just choosing a few notes and repeating them. Just developing the idea there. Repetition is something that the listener's ear can be drawn to, so use that in your solos. I restricted myself to one place on the bass, and that's really great for practice. It's also really great for just working out melodic ideas without jumping around too much. But a good thing to do is just to expand the entire range of the neck, and that gives you more scope for fast runs and more interesting ideas. So let's see what that sounds like. Literally just the same notes, in this case E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D, E. But just across the neck, and if it's pentatonic it's just fewer notes than that. So you're just playing the same patterns, you're playing the same intervals just across the neck. I think learning scales, you should learn one across the neck, one maybe in this direction, and learn to link them up in lots of different ways. Articulations. Bends, slides. As well as dynamics and making some notes really short, some notes longer. It's this idea that brings your playing to life, makes it sound a little bit more interesting. Pull-offs there. Slides and inflections like that will sound really good if you use those. Now we get to the really good stuff. We've got some notes that sound good, they work. Now obviously I've got a drum beat here, there's no chord going on in the background, but you know, you can imagine a guitarist just vamping over some sort of a chord, E minor 7 chord there. It's how you organize those notes that will make your solo sound good. So we're talking phrasing here. And just as a human talks in sentences, you've got to think about your playing in that way. Now, when you do YouTube videos, it's always a bit weird. I'm staring at a camera here. I'm not having a conversation with you, even though I know you're there. But when you're thinking about scales, you've got to think about letting other instruments in the band breathe, letting people have their say. I mean, if it's your solo, yeah, you've got some time to do things. But I think thinking about sparse phrases. So look, let me just play a couple of phrases. So that would be a pretty quick phrase, not many notes, leaving some room to breathe. Same rhythm, but using some different notes. I was also using a call and response idea there, where I'm doing a little idea here, and then doing a little bit of a response down here. Chord tones, scale tones. Here is the Dorian mode we learnt before. All those notes belong to the scale. Chord tones are when you play thirds. So we're going to go root, third, fifth. We're going to keep going. So you can go 7th, 9th, 11th. You can go 13th. So just as long as you know the numbers of the notes within a scale, you know, just count them as we go. You play the first, then you miss out every note from there, every other note. So there's the third, the minor third. So you can phrase your ideas around chord tones. Let's have a little listen to what that might sound like. So just adding in a few little scale tones with the chord tones. So again, this is note selection and note choice, but I'm phrasing around those ideas. Think about phrases like sentences, long and short, continuous, little fragments. Obviously we're using rhythms as well, so bring some rhythms into it and you'll start to sound a little more coherent in your soloing. Sequencing is another great idea. So you've got your scale notes. So we can do patterns of 3. If you use consecutive notes of scales, you can really start to get really melodic sounding ideas. Now, listen to other instruments. There's a really amazing guitar solo on Hello by Lionel Richie. It goes something like... Just lovely melodic ideas just going up and down the scales. You know, do something similar in this Dorian. You know, so you can get ideas from other instruments. But I really think that if you think about phrasing and organizing your ideas, not just into a stream of notes because you know that you can play all these notes in this scale, organizing them with rhythms, leaving some gaps, pauses, room to breathe, that will really make your soloing sound really good. I'm going to put a link below where you can listen to a few solos that I love. There's one really great one by Darryl Jones, who plays bass for the Rolling Stones now, but he's played for everyone. A real jazz guy back in the day, including with Miles Davis. There's a brilliant solo of him with Steve Smith, where he's working around a Dorian idea. Something like that, and he's using lots of rhythm. So syncopated ideas like that, where you're playing notes that really aren't on the beat. That can sound exciting, which brings me to the next point: tension and release. You can create tension by jerky rhythms like that, but also with notes. So far we've spoken about notes that are within a scale, so for example within the Dorian, but some players use notes outside. It's called playing outside the changes. I mean, we don't have any changes here, it's just one chord, but you can really provide tension by using chromaticism, for example. So, I mean, if we've got... we can see where the notes are in the scale if you learn it really well. Then you can see the notes that aren't in the scale. And if you start to add some of those in, it'll start to sound a little bit jazzy. So again, context is key here. If you're playing a nice melodic solo, maybe in just a major scale, you might not use outside movement. But let's have a look. There's that flat 5 again. If you hang about on that note, it just sounds a bit weird, a little bit outside. As long as you soon return to a safe chord tone, you'll be all right with it. You can actually play any note. This is a wrong note. That's another idea that a lot of players use. Is I had fret 12, 14 on the D and the G strings here. You just go up one fret, you're outside. So you can use existing patterns within the scale, just move them around until you know where you're going to hit a note that sounds good. Now, a lot of this takes A little bit of sitting down and experimentation, see what sounds good to you, but chromaticism can sound really good. So we got our note choices, we got our phrasing, we got some nice sequences, everything's starting to sound good. Now, if you listen to voices inside Everything Is Everything, the live version Donny Hathaway album, you've got one of the most famous bass solos of all time, and that's Willie Weeks playing that. There's also some stuff with Eric Clapton that he's got, and I'll put a link below where you can listen to this, but just an absolute master of really simple phrases and articulations, and it just sounds, everything he plays is amazing. I'm really getting into him recently. He's given a long time to solo, and obviously we might not be. If we're given a solo on a gig, you might have a very, very short amount of time. But regardless of that, I want you to think about structure. So don't just bust out all your best ideas immediately at the beginning and play really, really quick. If I switch to our Mixolydian vibe now, and that's more or less what Willie Weeks is doing on that solo. He starts off something like this. Really unrushed, unfussed, not bothered about showing off, playing loads of licks. He builds this solo. It's like it's a composition on its own. It's got a beginning, it's got a middle, it's got an end. He wants to increase excitement as we go. And even if you've got a 30-second solo, it doesn't matter. I think you can take this idea and start slow and build up. Another idea to add interest is just use some effects pedals. So this is a pretty clean sound we got here. Octave sounds great. Envelope filter on its own. Adding the octave in. Overdrive. Now I'm going against a lot of my advice here. I'm not really phrasing anything. I'm just playing a bunch of notes and not doing what I should be doing and phrasing them properly. That was just to demonstrate some sounds. So I hope that gives you a few ideas, but really my number one tip is whatever you play, do it with complete conviction and intention. Play just in time. I mean, that really is, you can play anything, and if it sounds like you mean it, and if it's in time, it's going to sound good. So if you don't have Victor Wooten chops, and look, who does? What you can do is just play simple stuff, but just really, really in the pocket. Download this 110 BPM drum beat, practice in different keys, play with drummers, and make sure that you can play in time and mean every single note, and your solos will sound really great. I hope you liked that video. Please subscribe to the channel if you did. I do at least a video every week, so if you've got any tips on what you might want to learn or any questions from this one, leave a comment below and I'll get back to you. Thanks for watching.